Well, since we're talking about riveting backup quarterback talk, let's welcome in Cameron Wolfe of the NFL Network, because I'm sure he was riveted by last night's football game. All right, what's more fun to watch right now, Cam? Whatever the hell the Titans are or what's happening in Miami? Thanks. It's, by the way, great to see you last night, brother. Always appreciate you taking some time. I know you're busy at this time of year.
Yeah, great to see you as well, Buck. Any answer that's not the Dolphins is the correct answer. That version of that offense is the worst offense in football, which is crazy because they were the best offense in football last year. So a lot has changed, and it made the Titans look like one of the better teams in the NFL. The defense performance from Tennessee was pretty special, especially without Jeffrey Simmons. L'Jarius Sneed pretty much took Tyreek Hill out of the game. And I like that he let him hear about it a little bit after the game too. And I just think, Miami's in complete disarray, and I think it was really good for Tennessee to come out and get a win going into their bye week. Looks like a team that's trying to build into the right direction.
Well, and you cover a lot of teams, obviously, over the course of your season. I know you were in Indianapolis on Sunday covering that Steelers Colts game, and then back home for you at Miami with this Titans and Dolphins game. When you went into the post-game Titans locker room last night, what sense did you get from that locker room, and what sense are you getting about Brian Callahan at this point before we pivot to the other side of this mess?
Yeah, I felt joy. I think one thing that's probably difficult for Brian Callahan is he comes in, he has this new culture that he's trying to set, something he's trying to build, and every new coach has that. But then if you don't win games, it's hard to feel like it resonates. No matter how good you think it is, no matter how much you think guys are buying in, if you don't win, it's kind of like, do they really care? Are they really buying in? And it felt like that was a realization of like what we've been building toward actually has a positive result. Like it's possible. We came here on the road without our best player and not only won, but won in a dominant effort. Miami has their issues, but this is the NFL. No one cares whatever the Dolphins are going through because Titans have their own issues, right? And so the Titans came out, and for that given Monday, they dominated the team on the road without their best player. And when I went in the locker room, it was a fun scene. You got an NBA young boy playing in the blasting in the locker room. You got guys smiling up. GM Ryan Carthon giving big hugs to everyone. It's not a celebration in that like they accomplish anything more than a win, but like I said, it felt like a realization of we're building towards something, and positive results kind of affirm that more than anything else.
At Cameron Wolfe is where you can follow him. That's Wolfe with an E. You can also follow him on Instagram to see all the different places that he's traveling around. Of course, you can watch him on the NFL Network at Cameron D. Wolfe on Instagram.
So, Cam, back-to-back weeks, you've covered eerily similar scenarios where young, struggling second-year quarterback gets hurt early in the first half, and veteran backup comes in and just stabilizes things and leads them to a win. Between the Colts and Anthony Richardson, the Titans' next opponent, and the Titans and Will Levis, between those two franchises, who would you say would be closer to going ahead and just going with the backup?
Probably Tennessee, honestly. I think Tennessee. So Anthony Richardson, we knew coming out was going to be extremely raw, and he is. He has things he has to clean up with his footwork. But for the Colts, I think more than anything, the most important element of this season was to evaluate Anthony Richardson, let him develop. Even if they won 4 games, their goal was developing Anthony Richardson. I think the Titans obviously want to see what Will Levis has, but the Colts are not going to draft a quarterback next year. The Titans certainly could be in the mix to draft a quarterback next year. I just don't think there's as many ties. And a part of that is because one quarterback was drafted in the top 5 and another was a second-round pick. Some of that certainly has a factor. And for Richardson, a lot of his issues are technique. Some of Levis's issues, honestly, have been decision-making. And that's something that I don't know if it's as easy to fix. You could fix somebody's footwork if they, only have a fastball they throw over somebody's head. But Levis has made a lot of mistakes where it's just like, man, that's a decision-making error. Like even the one he threw last night to Emmanuel Ogbah. I know he said he didn't see the guy, but like I don't know, man. Sometimes I watch Will Levis and I wonder, did he shotgun 3 Red Bulls before he took the game? It's just, everything just seems so fast, fast, fast. And, it's got to slow down for him. So to answer your question, I think Mason may give them a level of calmness, as we saw last night, that this team could desire more than, Joe Flacco's nice coming off the bench, but they need to see Richardson in any.
Cam, every press conference with Levis is like a psych eval. I said this last week where we're asking him, hey, have you thought about a sports psychologist or all these different things? He's so tightly wound, which we knew coming out of Kentucky. This was a part of the dialogue around him as a player at Penn State, as a player in the SEC at Kentucky, and still into the NFL. And like, he's saying, I didn't get a chance to see that clip, honestly, until this morning, of him saying he didn't see Emmanuel Ogbah at all, because the press box, obviously, we're not seeing all these things unless you're immediately glancing up at the TV in front of you. But he predetermines a lot of his throws. We asked Brian Callahan about it last week, and some are a product of the scheme, and some are Will Levis predetermining throws. I don't know how you rewire a guy who has already talked about needing to rewire how his brain works.
Right. That's why I said that's why my answer was what it was, because sometimes there's answers that may not be fixable. And look, I want Will Levis to have success. I'm sure he's a good dude. You never want to see, a young quarterback kind of buried at this stage, but franchises have to make decisions. And at some point you have to determine what is fixable and what is not. And I'm sure, as Brian Callahan said, Will Levis is going to get a chance to be back in the starting lineup. He has a chance to kind of fix some of the things we're talking about. But if it's not fixable, if we're still seeing the same version of quarterback the latter parts of the season, I don't know how much more time you can give that guy to, to figure it out. And so that's going to be a question for them, this franchise, in the offseason. I'm sure they would have loved to have him continue to cultivate while they build this roster. And in a perfect scenario, you build your roster up so it's ready to drop that franchise quarterback in. But, they may not have a choice. They may have to pull that trigger in April if it continues this way. So that's the bummer of this thing, because I think they saw a lot of things in Will Levis last year where it's like we have the potential to be able to get elements out of him. And maybe there's still some potential, but as time goes on, potential dissipates and it becomes this is reality.
Cam Wolfe of the NFL Network here with us on 104.5 The Zone. What was the thing that surprised you the most about the outcome of last night's game?
Just how dominant the Titans defense, and particularly the defensive front, was without Jeffrey Simmons. Like I said, I think he's their best player. And there was times where Miami just completely abandoned any possibility of running the ball in the middle because of they couldn't run it. Like, they just had no success. Like, I think Sweat had an amazing game last night. I haven't seen every game he's played, but my good guess is that's the best game he's played as a pro.
He's a monster, and yes, you are correct.
Yeah, he dominated it. And you think back to the draft period, I got to give Rand Carthon and his team credit, because a lot of teams took Sweat off their board. He's a red flag, for a lot of the stuff off the field. But if you're confident in your evaluation, you get a dominant, huge, gap stopper. And we saw it last night, just how much he could wreck that game. And so seeing him kind of take out the entire run game, which that was the Dolphins' plan. The Dolphins were not expecting Snoop Huntley to all of a sudden, beat Tua. They were hoping that they could have some version of success with the run game, have Snoop be able to run the ball and play off each other. And once the run game never came alive, it really killed the offense. And then on the other side of the ball, you got the outside of the ball, you got L'Jarius Sneed playing really, really good defense against Tyreek Hill on a iffy hamstring, which, that's not an injury I want to have going against Tyreek Hill, but he was fairly invisible for much of that game. And I'd say that Sneed even influenced them a little bit on that fumble with some of the trash talk they may have had getting in his head. So to me, seeing the defensive performance in particular, and really some of the guys they brought in over the last year be a part of this, I think that stood out to me. It's
not even Sweat related, Cam. What the hell was Miami thinking giving Aaron Brewer money? I don't understand that. I watched him, and I know you. That's a little disrespectful of me. I understand that. I don't want to put you in a bad spot. But I know Aaron Brewer to be an undersized player in the NFL. I have seen that situation happen here for the past couple of years. I know you're familiar with his work, obviously. I never understood that contract.
Yeah, that was an example of scheme being a plan more than player being a plan. The thought was Aaron Brewer's super athletic. We know he's undersized, but Mike McDaniel's belief is athleticism is more important than power in his scheme, and that we can get you on the move and we can hide you in those situations against power. It's helpful when you're not playing a 330, 340-pound monster inside. It's funny, Aaron Bruno actually played pretty decently up until this game. But it was also the first time he's played a mammoth nose tackle like Sweat right in front of him. So that's the big weakness of having a tiny center who struggles with power, that you can completely be overpowered. They made a decision early on that they were going to move on from Connor Williams, who had a torn ACL for them, and Mike McDaniel wanted speed. So that is the consequences. And we're seeing with this Dolphins team, they've chose time and time again to choose speed over physicality. And I think that's part of the reason they're in the predicament they are.
Speaking of former Titans, Cam, when Tua went down, was there any thought to giving Ryan Tannehill a call? That was the first name that came up here when Jordan Love went down in Green Bay, when Tua went down in Miami, and obviously there's the connection there. But was there any noise about that at all in Miami?
Not much. Not much. They didn't give him a call. It wasn't much of a consideration. Honestly, I don't think Ryan would have taken it. From what I understand, Ryan Tannehill wants a full-time starting job. He's not coming in for 2 or 3 games while Tua is on IR. And so I don't know if they already knew he would say no and they didn't call, or if they weren't interested and didn't give a call. Either way, there was no communication between the two sides there. Miami probably stubbornly decided we're going to just kind of play within the fringes and think that we can stay afloat with the talent of our rest of our roster. And as we saw last night, that was the wrong choice.
It's interesting because I know he turned down Green Bay despite them giving him a call in that situation, Cam, and obviously proximity to where he lives, that the Miami connection was an easy one to try and draw without, the understanding fully what Ryan Tannehill was looking for. I'd like to pivot, though, to another veteran quarterback who was in a similar situation last year with Joe Flacco, who's now in Indianapolis, who is backing up Anthony Richardson. And forgive me, I know you did some reporting on Richardson. Do you have any kind of timeline on what? I know you talked to him in the postgame locker room. What's the sense from Anthony Richardson at this point? Because obviously that's the Titans' next opponent after the bye.
Yeah, so I'll do Richardson first and go back to Flacco. So he's got a hip pointer and a don't-know strain coming out of that game. He could have come back from what I understood this game, but he would have been very limited as a runner. He would have to be pretty much a pocket passer only. He couldn't push off of that leg. And given his game, it's hard to limit him as just a pocket passer. So he could be back this week. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he plays this week. It's going to be a pain tolerance thing. A lot of times with hip pointers, they're not structural, but they're very painful. Mobility is a question. It's one of the things you're going to have to shoot up with shots and painkillers on Sunday to play. And so I think you'll see him probably very limited to no practice early portion of this week. If he gets limited by the back end, maybe they try to give him a go. If not, maybe they hold him out 1 week. I don't anticipate this being more than a 1 week absence if there is one, but obviously for this week, he could be a decision for him. And then as far as Joe Flacco, man, 39 years old, still keeping guys on track. And I get the conversation. There's been a lot of conversation on social media of like Joe Flacco's better for this offense than Anthony Richardson. And I get the conversation because he's a veteran. He keeps things on time. You have a little bit more consistency. He can't throw it 70 yards like Richardson, but he also doesn't miss all of the throws that Richardson has. And so there's a level of consistency, stability that if you have a good running game, if you have a good defense, you learn the value. And so I think they'd be fine this week if it's Joe Flacco. Now, if it's over 3, 4, 5 weeks, I think that's where your old vet gets a little bit exposed, like he did in the playoff game, where guys start blitzing him. You realize he's a statue back there. It's not as pretty, but for a 1 or 2 game setting, Joe Flacco can be really good. And I'll tell you what, the receivers enjoyed having a lot of consistency and on time passing for him as a quarterback.
He's Cameron Wolfe of the NFL Network. You can watch him on TV. You can follow him at Cameron Wolfe with an E on Twitter, Cameron D. Wolfe on Instagram. Buddy, like I said, always great to see you. Thank you again for taking the time, and looking forward to continue to watching your coverage on TV.
Buck, Lucas, appreciate you guys. Thank you.
The main man, Cam Wolfe of the NFL Network, there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Let's take some reaction. 615-737-1045. the number if you want to get involved. Titans would be the team closer to pulling their starting second-year quarterback between the Titans and the Colts. Makes a lot of sense. Sam is up next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Buck. Messing with my emotions. I thought I was going to be on, and then you're like, oh, no, got to go to this guy.
Sorry, Bub. I'm just trying to get everybody in the order that they've been waiting.
Okay. First time I've ever called. I've been a Titans/Oilers fan all my life. I'm talking about Run and Shoot, Warren Moon, Haywood Jeffries. So go from all those points scored to just being happy we finally got 30 after 1,000 days.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is, I think Mason Rudolph gives us a kind of comfort that we don't have with Levis yet. You know, first-time head coach, trying to implement his vision on the offense. And it's hard when there's turnovers every other play. It seems like, you know, so many turnovers. He can't get into a rhythm. He's trying to figure it out himself. And I think right now, Rudolph is going to give him that comfort just to being able to do that for the team. So the team can kind of build around it and kind of, he talked about it last night, the team buying in on what he's trying to implement, on what he's trying to do, so they can see that actually being implemented without a turnover all the time. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the call, Sam. Right at the gun. How about that? We appreciate it. We'll get more of your phone calls coming up next, but I do want to touch on one thing. Yes, Mason Rudolph is the safer option. Yes, without dispute, he is the safer option. He is the most known commodity. He has been the entire time. He's the most known commodity in the quarterback room, whether it was Malik, Levis, and Rudolph. Rudolph is the most proven and established player at that position that this team has. He still is. But it's not about comfort level this year. It's about how much further can you elevate this team? How much further, ostensibly, can you raise the ceiling of this team with the young quarterback who does still have a higher ceiling than Mason Rudolph? But Levis isn't putting it together. He hasn't yet. I don't know if he can. I don't trust him. I've said this as a player. I like Will Levis perfectly fine as a human being. Very nice person. Enjoyed all my dealings with him, what have you. But as a player, you don't trust him. Or at least I would find it very, very hard to if I was a Titans fan. So it's not about doing the safest thing. It's about trying to figure out how much better you can be with a player that's clearly got talent. But if that talented player never puts it together to become skilled, the way that we've talked about time in and time out, you still have to figure that out, even if it puts you in uncomfortable positions from time to time. I know you want microwave results. It's just unfortunate that that's not how this works. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Last call for phone calls coming up next.